VE Day stands for Victory in Europe Day and celebrates the 8th of May 1945 when Nazi Germany surrendered its armed forces. The Second World War had been raging since 1939, and after nearly 6 terrible years, the Nazi leader Adolf Hitler committed suicide as the Allied troops surrounded the German capital Berlin. Hitler's successor, Karl Dönitz, negotiated the end of the war and agreed that all hostilities would stop at 11:01 p.m. on May the 8th, 1945. In Britain, people knew that the end was coming because the German army had been significantly weakened since the end of 1944, so people were on standby to start celebrating. The announcement of the surrender was actually made on the 7th of May, but people weren't going to wait to start celebrating. They'd had to endure wartime restrictions like clothing and food rationing. You couldn't just eat anything, and there'd been blackouts and bombing raids. So it was no surprise that flags and bunting and bonfires were seen all over the country. There were street parties and parades and services of Thanksgiving. St Paul's Cathedral in London had 10 services in a row to accommodate the thousands and thousands of people who wanted to attend. There were 50,000 people at Piccadilly Circus with music and dancing and an incredible party atmosphere. Pubs and dance halls stayed open till midnight, and King George VI appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace with his wife, Queen Elizabeth, his 2 daughters and the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, before a cheering crowd. But the war was not over. As Churchill said on a national radio broadcast, "We may allow ourselves this brief period of rejoicing, but let us not forget for a moment the toil and efforts that lie ahead." The war in Japan was still ongoing, and that did not end until the 15th of August that year. But not everybody enjoyed the VE Day celebrations. Many people had lost loved ones, and the Second World War was directly responsible for the deaths of 75 million people. That's 3% of the world's population at that time. And some countries suffered worse than others. In what is now Belarus, entire villages had been wiped out, and 1 in 4 of the people in that country had been killed. Also, the end of fighting didn't mean the end of wartime restrictions, with clothes rationing staying in place for another 4 years and food rationing for another 9 years. And the war left many countries, like the United Kingdom, with no money. However, on the 8th of May, or the 9th of May if you live in a country to the east of Europe, we will all raise a glass, or mug, to mark the moment the end of the war in Europe was announced, and to remember those who fought for our freedom. Thank you.